is Heidi Barber. I am the farm manager for Peak Farm. Today we're going to go through planting a vegetable garden. We have approximately a quarter acre that has already been plowed and mostly prepped in between the rain showers and other events that have been going on. We will go through and video everything as far as laying it out, and we will talk about some of the things to take into consideration when planting your garden. Thank you. First thing we're going to do this morning is we are going to measure out the distance between our rows and get stakes put in with strings so we can mark where the row should be. For most vegetables, you want approximately a 3-foot distance between your rows. And when you actually plant your seed, pay attention to your seed packs. Make sure you know how far apart the individual seeds need to be planted. Now we got a couple of rows marked out. We're going to take a hoe and trace a small trench, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, depending upon seed, down along that line so we have our row drawn out nice and straight. Once we're done with that, we can take our seeds and start planting them within that trench, following by the seed spacing. Okay, before we actually start laying out and planting some of our seed, I've already gone through when I got all the seed in and sort of separated the seeds out by the way they're going to get planted, and I was taking into consideration companion plants and ally plants and faux plants. So you can go to Farmer's Almanac, any of your land grant universities that do extension work, any of your master gardeners, and get with them, and you should be able to get a pretty complete list of what companion plants are, what ally plants are, and what faux plants are for the different type of seeds you plan on planting. And this is important because your companion and ally plants, what they do is they complement each other. They don't take away nutrients from the other plant, and they grow better together. Typically your ally plants are things that will help keep away pests from the vegetables that you're growing. Your faux plants are plants that typically deplete the nutrients that the vegetable you're trying to plant need in order to grow well. So that's something to take into consideration when you're getting ready to plant your garden. There's quite a few resources on finding the charts for it. Most, if not all, of your seed catalogs will typically list in the description, either in the description of the seed, or they'll have a guide at the front of their catalog that shows companion, ally, and faux plants. Now here I've got my melons and squash and cucumbers and pumpkins, things that tend to grow like a vine that need a lot of space. They typically need about 6 foot in between each of the plantings, and most of these, if you don't do them in a raised bed, you can do them in mounds, what we call mounds. Basically, you just waller out a 3-foot diameter area and build up a ring around it so it acts as a water retention ring, because most of these plants, as they're growing and producing their vegetable or fruit, require a lot of water. So mounding it helps retain water for them. Then my tray here, as you can see, all the seeds, can't necessarily see each individual one, but they are relatively in order by companion plants and will get planted across the garden that way. I have a couple of the package there with the asparagus and rhubarb that I'll be putting into raised beds. Also, whenever you're getting ready to plant, you can get plant identification stakes. So what I'm going to do, because this is the first time we're planting a garden, I went on Aggie Horticulture to find out what plant types and varieties would supposedly grow best for our county here in Coryell County. And now what I'm going to do is make sure I've got a label with what type of plant it is and what variety. That way, as this stuff grows, if I find plants that aren't growing well here, I won't reorder them next time. If I find a plant that's doing well, I'll make sure that I reorder that variety. That way I can increase my production later down the road. The first vegetables I'm going to plant today is the Silver Queen sweet corn. The seed's supposed to be planted approximately 6 inches apart. And the thing with corn, you want to plant at least 3 rows because of the way that it pollinates and produces its vegetable. If you plant just one long straight row, you're going to have a very low yield, because the way the corn pollinates itself, when it makes its tassel, the wind blows and blows that down into the little crevices from each of the ear stalks. That way it can seed the corn. So you always want to make sure you have at least 3 to 4 rows of it. The corn should be planted approximately 6 inches apart. So just to show the seed in the rows as it's planted. It's nothing super fancy. Now what you do after you got all your seed in is go back through and cover up your rows. You don't want to tightly pack it down. You just want to be able to get a covering over it, a light tamp. And then once you're completely done planting your garden, you want to put your sprinkler on it for approximately 15 minutes, just enough to get the ground wet, but not enough to cause runoff. That way it'll settle the dirt over the seed and it'll give them some moisture to start with sprouting. Earlier I talked about making mounds for your vine type plants such as your squash or watermelons, zucchini, etc. So what I've got here is a mound that I've made. All you do is you make a ring of dirt around it so it'll help hold water, and you put your plants, plant them in the middle. And you can see I've got several mounds out here for the different types of squash and watermelon and cantaloupes that I have that we planted. And as we pan out, we can see the different rows that are already planted. You should be able to see the markers I have at the end of the rows, indicating what type of vegetable I have planted in these rows. And it's just so that as we see things starting to sprout, we can kind of get an idea and keep data on what is doing well and what maybe isn't doing so well. That way next year when we get ready to plant the garden, we can put in the things that do really well and maybe eliminate the things that don't do so well, or figure out why they didn't do well. If it's just a matter of adding something to the soil, such as fertilizer or phosphorus or something like that, we can go back in and do that to make those plants do better. So another option for gardening is doing what's known as raised beds. We have these flush on top of the ground so that the ground is underneath. We're not having to put in 18, 24 inches worth of sideboards to be able to make these raised beds, but it gets up off the normal ground level. And it keeps it into a nice narrow area, which makes it generally a lot easier to weed. You can see we have different plants that have been planted and are already growing in here. Most of the items that are over here is onions and herbs. We have one known string bean plant because we had it. It was the only one that survived out of the ones we started in pot. The other thing you can do, if you don't want to go out and spend a ton of money on a greenhouse kit, surf the Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist to see if anybody's giving away old trampolines. You can take the frames from the trampolines and make a hoop house. Depending upon how skilled you are, at some point you could potentially turn it into a greenhouse. Now this one here and those raised beds that you saw are products of our cohort 7 team that's working on putting these together as part of their team project. But for these, they found the first 2 trampolines, got them for free. I've got additional 2 trampoline frames that I picked up from folks. And again, one of them was a friend of mine, had originally gotten it for making a whelping box for her Great Danes that she breeds. And then the other one was somebody that was moved and windstorm had torn it apart and they didn't want to take it with them. And rather than putting it out in the trash to advertise it, so I picked it up for free. So you can pick up stuff like this for free. You just gotta be patient, plan ahead, and start watching some of those different marketplaces and pick up the items as they come available.